Tabor Bensky. Pete Zahn. Freddie Smith Friend.
Here.
Cheryl Cook. James Newman.
Present.
Jake Nicely.
Here.
John Camchon.
Here.
And Kenneth Hunt.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Full house.
Full house.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
for all.
Approval of minutes, have you all had a chance to review them? And are there any corrections or revisions? Approval.
I just have a question or comment. Who's the vice chair of this committee?
Is Cheryl the vice chair?
Actually, I thought I was the vice chair.
Oh, you were too.
That was the only thing because I'm vice chair of DDA.
Right.
and so
Right.
I think the last Bob Abraham was the DDA rep, and he was vice chair of this, but not me.
Right. Yeah, so I had the understanding I was the vice chair, so when I saw that, so I just figured I'd bring that
So
up.
we'll correct those, and then I'll
Okay.
amend my
And we're going to,
motion.
I'm sorry, we're going to check the minutes too to see when the last election was made so that we can be very positive on that. Mr. Honey is the vice chair.
I think I recall that as well, though.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you can verify, that's
Yeah,
good.
we'll
And
verify.
maybe go back and revise any previous minutes that were incorrect.
Yep.
So we've, Cheryl said she's revising her motion to approve with that revision.
Okay.
And we had a second. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Who's the second?
Opposed, like sign, motion
I
carries.
could second.
Okay.
Yes. Police report, Mr. Nicola, is he here? Do we have a report? I thought that, I tried it out and it didn't work both ways. Thank you. Well, we have a report in the package, if you all want to review that at your leisure. Presentations. I guess we've got a Beach Street beautification for roadway improvement coming up.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Veenstra. I'm an engineer and the project manager for the Beach Street project in Public Works. You could pull up maybe the Beach Street rendering. Beach Street Phase 2 is really a continuation of the first part of the Beach Street project that went between Orange Avenue and Bay, and that was completed in 2021. Beach Street Phase 2 will go from where that project left off at Bay Street all the way to Michigan Avenue. Now, at one time, it was being considered to take this all the way up to Fairview, and they were considering a roundabout, but in some of the discussions during the commission, it was elected that that part of the project might be combined with a larger look at the whole North Beach Street corridor, and if something was going to happen at the Fairview intersection, it would take place in conjunction with that. So, also, as part of the Beach Street Phase 2, Mary McLeod Bethune Boulevard between Beach Street and Ridgewood Avenue will be part of the project. So conceptually, this will be a streetscape project similar to what is in Phase 1. One of the big items will be reducing the lanes from 4 lanes as it is currently down to 2 lanes. With traffic calming associated with that. Beach Street will be converted to a concrete pavement just like Phase 1. Additionally, one of the major features will be pedestrian-friendly sidewalks. We're going to look at getting 12-foot sidewalks on both sides of the road, and that'll be similar to the shell concrete that's in Phase 1 along the riverfront park. We're probably not going to be putting in paving blocks for sidewalks like was in Phase 1. There will be accents at the intersections with pavers, for the crosswalks. That'd be at Bay Street, at MMB. And also, we got a mid-block crossing close to Brown and Brown that lines up with Manatee Island and the nice restroom, bathroom facility they have right at that location. One of the other major features of Beach Street Phase 2 will be the raised median island, just like it is in Phase 1. That was a thought that came up, was mentioned repeatedly at the public meetings and during the workshops with Commission, that they wanted to go with the raised median island with the opportunity for landscaping. So the thought process is to continue on with the palm tree theme that's in Phase 1, whether those be medjool palms or some other type of palm. We haven't finalized that yet. We want to make sure it works with the Riverfront Park landscaping. One other feature, I guess we're aware of the development at 400 Beach Street. We've been monitoring that. We've talked to the designers of that project. We're monitoring the submittals as it goes along in TRT. So what's going to end up happening is they're probably going to be building first, so we will adapt to what they're doing. We're aware of what they're doing, and everything's okay on that. We're stopping short of Michigan Avenue, so any access to the parking garage for them will be okay, and we have a median cut through off Beach Street for their parking garage entrance. We will also be revising the lighting out there. We'll be taking down the existing concrete light poles with the Cobra heads, and we'll be going with a nicer FPL lighting, similar to what's in Phase 1, the streetscape lighting along the sides, and there will be some median lights, but those haven't been selected yet. All of the associated poles out there and any remaining overhead wires will come down and be placed underground along this section of Beach Street. And also, we'll be installing new mast arm traffic signals at Bay Street and at MMB. Those existing old traffic signals that are attached to span wires, attached to poles on each side of the intersection, all that will come down, and you'll have nice, the black mast arms like you would see at ISB in Beach or Orange Avenue in Beach. That's the concept of what we're going with there. In terms of parking spaces, we're looking right now at 170 parking spaces. And what the concept is, and this came out in public meetings and discussions with Commission, they want to maximize the parking in front of the redesigned Riverfront Park. So there'll be angled parking in front of the park on the east side between MMB and Michigan. On the other side of the road, there'll be parallel parking. There's not a lot of opportunity in front of the 400 Beach Street project, but there is parallel parking in front of Brown and Brown, and that's going to pretty much remain as it is. Then further down between Bay and MMB, in front of the commercial properties and the post office, we're going with angled parking there, and that'll continue on up to MMB. In front of the old Volusia admin building, don't know how that's going to be developed, but that could be some commercial project going in there. So the switch between parallel and where the angled parking is will take place through the intersection of MMB. And the parking count will be roughly close to 170 spots. It was considered, there was an early design alternative presented that had angled parking on both sides, but that, with the room we have, you can't have a median and have angled parking on both sides. So you have to have parallel parking on one side, angled parking on the other, in order to have the raised median. Looking at, or let me talk about utilities a minute. We will be replacing the storm drain pipe under the road. We'll be upsizing that. It's old clay pipe now. In conjunction with the Riverfront Park project, most of the outfalls were upsized, new pipes were installed, backflow preventers were installed with the hope that it would help prevent some of the high water levels in the river backing up onto Beach Street. There will be some new water main. There'll be a reclaimed water main extension all the way out to Michigan, as well as replacing all the old sanitary sewer services and replacing all the water services. On Mary McLeod Bethune Boulevard, that is going to be mostly a rebuild. The existing base and asphalt surfacing there are in terrible shape if you've driven down that road. With the heavy traffic, there's failed utilities. You can see patches all along that road. So we're going to replace the sanitary sewer. We're replacing the water main. We're also going to have a reclaimed main extension from the end of the Brown and Brown property all the way up to Ridgewood. One of the thoughts, or one of the themes that came up in the public meetings and with commission is to make that corridor more pedestrian friendly. So what we're going to do is we're going to narrow the travel lanes. They're like 18 feet now. We're going to narrow them down to 12-foot lanes and have wider sidewalks. We're going to have 11-foot sidewalks on both sides of the road to hopefully be more pedestrian friendly. And those sidewalks will also be the shell-infused concrete like I was discussing earlier. It will also have the improved FPL lighting, decorative lighting alongside the road. There's not a lot of opportunity for landscaping, but we're going to try and put some tree wells in, perhaps every 100 feet, get some landscaping installed in there, but we're a little bit constrained on that, but hopefully it'll give at least the effect of a tree-lined street. We're replacing all the utilities in there, sanitary and water. In terms of construction schedule, this project would probably take about 15 months to construct. Currently, there is no funding for the project. Our estimated cost right now is $8.3 million. We have applied with LAP funding through FDOT, but currently it's not a programmed project. So our intent is to keep on with the design, finish up our design probably by the first quarter of next year, and hopefully funding will be available by that time. Glad to answer any questions about the project, kind of where we're at.
I was just wondering, it seems like the entire new downtown project has no bicycle lanes.
Yeah, we're not having bicycle lanes, but we will have 12-foot multi-use, basically the size of multi-use path.
But you're not allowed to use a sidewalk to ride a bicycle, correct?
Well, on a multi-use path, and
Okay.
so, I mean, 12-foot wide is standard for a multi-use path,
Okay.
but we're not having a dedicated separate bike lane, no.
Aren't you trying to prevent or, let's just say, not encourage bicycles on the west side of the street because all the businesses are there?
Yeah, and
That
through,
gets kind of busy.
yeah, through the park, you know, there's trails and paths through the park. And there's completion of the trail down along the river, up across ISB and further on. So there's bike trails in the area through the park area.
Mr. Chair, John brings up a good point, though, because we have a lot of skateboarders, bicyclists riding down the sidewalk. So if there was a access point or a lane, you know, available for bicyclists or skateboarders along the highway, that would be an alternative to get them off the sidewalk.
Yeah,
Because I can imagine, you know, going with a wider sidewalk now, they're really going to take advantage of, you know, the skateboarders and the
And the
bicycles.
scooters too.
And
you
the
know, electric
scooters.
Scooters and stuff.
yeah. And part of that, I know that maybe called something else now, but the Sweetheart Trail that was further south on Beach Street that they put in, that will come up to the park area and then kind of circle around. You know, they'll take them not on the street, but kind of around through the park, and they'll end up on the other side after the completion of the project. We'll take them all the way up to Baloo Road, I believe. So That is a bicycle and pedestrian facility that goes along the South Beach Street, get up, to go down Orange, past City Island, and up that way.
But is it I'm sorry.
I was going to sort of piggyback on John's. Because I was thinking the same thing about the bicycles, and not necessarily for them to have recreational use through the town, but a lot of people are using them as means of transportation in downtown areas when they're vacationing here. They're renting bikes or getting bikes to access the businesses. So if there's nothing available for them to access the businesses via bicycle or scooter, it seems like we're missing an opportunity.
Or what about like a bike rack? Are there any bike racks anywhere?
We don't have any added right now, but it can be added,
Yeah.
especially at the where we got a little more room around the intersections and at the mid-block crossing. I think there are bike racks in the park where we have the mid-block crossing, but those are pretty easy to add. It's just where we have the space for them. So we'll make a note and look at that a little
Yeah,
closer.
I mean, any of these questions are just based off, you see a lot of the other development, trying to have more walking campuses, more bike riding campuses, trying to get further away from being so car-centric,
Right. That's a good idea. We can definitely look at that. It's not a big deal to put those in.
If the sidewalk on the east side is designated as a multi-use pathway, would it be possible to designate part of that pathway as a bike lane, just on the surface of the pathway?
We could definitely
Kind of
look
like
into-
they do in the Sweetheart Trail.
Right. We could look into that. Striping or color coordinating.
Right.
Yeah.
And if there was a section of it that was designated, then that would keep people from weaving back and forth, and it would kind of keep the bikers in one lane and the walkers in another lane.
Okay. I'll kind of check with the engineer who's doing the trail and the Sweetheart Trail and through the park and just see how we can coordinate that better.
There may be some kind of decorative signature or something that you could put to identify
Right, different
which
coloring.
one, different coloring or
A lot of
something.
green I've seen.
Yeah.
Well, conversely, some striping may be out on the street in the traffic lanes. I came downtown, I think 2 days ago. There was a couple riding their bikes in the street, and I had plenty of room to surpass them. So maybe right behind the parking lanes, there could be a bicycle lane there.
Okay.
If there's room for it. I think Florida law, you have to pass beyond 3 feet.
Yeah.
But I think downtown, what I see is the same people over and over again that are riding their bikes or skateboards up the sidewalk and kind of barreling through, and it seem to be the same culprits again and again, and not so much, at least so far, when tourists come, they tend to stick to either the street or the other side of the street. That's just in my observation. I'm only there during the day, so I don't know what happens all evening long.
Okay. Well, we can definitely go back and look at the possibility of adding a bike lane in there, given the geometry and the restrictions we have. Back when we have time in the design process.
A lot of riders, I know especially on weekends, people from Ormond ride all the way down Beach Street, and they connect through Blue Road area. And at some point, it would be nice to figure out how to make that connection that's a little more safe for the bike riders. And they're recreational riders. They're not commuting. They're on Sunday, riding up to Ormond and back down just for exercise. But that one section through the Blue Road area is kind of dangerous because there really isn't any place for them to ride.
Are you talking about I know the Sweetheart Trail goes up past there.
Right.
Okay.
It does go past there, but it's out in the middle of the road for a little ways. So as future plans connect those two areas, it might be a good idea to keep that in mind so that as you develop the northern part of this project, it's ready to connect into the next phase of it
Right.
as it goes further north.
Yeah, my intention wasn't necessarily like to redo the plans. One thing, just bicyclists aren't going anywhere. They're here, so we might as well put them in the plan.
Okay. Understood.
And I want to comment on the other one, MMB. On the north side of the street, about midway, I know the property owner and the business owner
Okay.
who's renovating that property, and probably for guests and customers, he'll probably need some on-street parking. So he's already doing underground utilities, gas, natural gas, and everything. So what could be taken in consideration to maybe have a couple parking spots there?
I'd have to get the specific location on that.
202 Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune Boulevard.
202?
Yes.
Okay.
What's the width of a parallel space? 10?
Yeah.
Because you've got your planter 6'4". That'd take up the entire planter and the concrete walk on that side. I was looking at the sections trying to figure out the difference in the two, and the one on the right is just where the trees are.
Correct.
If you look in the plan view, there's a green overhead view, so that just represents the planter at that particular point.
And it could be shifted or adjusted. I'm sure that property owner will do quite a bit of landscaping out there to complement what your plan is.
All right, well, that's good information to know. We'll plug that in and see what's possible.
Okay, great.
Is the Sweetheart Trail, though, now accessible to all the bikes? Because with the construction, they've had to put a fence so that the homeless won't be in the park up there when they come in off of the Blue Road area, though? But is there a fence that they have to get get through, to get the Sweetheart Trail up against the river?
Right now, it just goes, it dead ends into the Main Street Bridge, and there really isn't any way to get across Main Street to go further north.
But if it dead ends there, can you get out that way, or is that where that fence is still
You
around
can get
there?
out. Yeah,
Okay.
it comes out onto Main Street.
Okay.
How long is that Sweetheart Trail? Half a mile, mile?
Oh, I
What's
bet
the-
it's more than
It
that.
goes from St. Augustine to Miami.
Oh, wow.
I mean, in this stretch, I know it goes well down, to the city limits on South Beach Street.
It's a state trail, not a city trail,
Right.
if it's going from Jacksonville to Miami.
Yeah, it was paid for by Sun Trail Funds, I think the name of it was.
It was part of the Florida Greenbelt
I think.
Trail System.
Well, I've been watching the development of the park between Orange and Magnolia. As I come across there on the way home and to work, and it's really, all of a sudden the trees and shrubs go in, and what a huge difference it makes.
Definitely.
That's looking real nice.
I think it's, at least part of it's scheduled to be open soon. I think the part between Magnolia and Orange, from my understanding, is going to be open before the other one. I could be wrong.
It's obvious.
It's further along than
I think they're shooting for
Across the dirt
mid-July.
In front of Cook Jewelers right now.
mid-July.
Yeah, that's what Joe told me last time I talked to him, was they're hoping to open in mid-July.
Well, I had a lot of feedback years ago when we were doing some preliminary stuff about Beach Street and going from 4 to 2.
Mm-hmm.
And all my friends are asking me, what do you think? And I thought it was a good idea because it was a very convenient way to get from south to north or north to south. Blue Road and keep going because there was 2 lanes, and so it was never slowed down by any traffic. So the idea to traffic calm it and slow it down, that does it, and it makes it more, let's say, more pedestrian, like Winter Park,
Mm-hmm.
and utilize Palmetto because it's got 5 lanes And if somebody really needs to get some traffic moved, you can go up there to get from A to B. And I really like the idea of the median in the middle. The question came up at the last meeting when the framework was presenting about the median and how that was gonna work, and I see one there for Brown and Brown. But the sheet ends at Michigan, so we don't, it looks like there's a turn lane there about to happen, so obviously there will be some kind of a right turn onto Michigan. But they had a porte cochere or a drive-through in front of framework. Are they gonna require
That's,
a median there?
that's going to be right in, right out. It's going to be a one-way. They have the opening at the traffic, at the garage entrance off of Beach. That would be to the south of Michigan.
Right.
And there are other ones on Michigan.
Right.
But the, what you're talking about, the circular drive, yeah, it's going to be right in, right out.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the audience?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple items for Mark, and for the board to also think about in this design. Let's talk about streetlights first. So we're going from the Cobra heads to what? What's going to be the design of the streetlights on Beach?
It's going to be similar to Phase 1 in that you're going to have the decorative side street or sidewalk lights, and there will also be median lights. We're going to
Okay.
have some kind of overhead lighting, probably with the LED lights. The final selection hasn't been made, but it's probably going to be a newer looking LED light. And the pole selection hasn't been made, whether it's a black pole or the standard concrete pole. I don't have.
Yeah, the poles are, would be pretty important for downtown. Having something, not the poles that we would have out on Ridgewood or, those areas that is mostly heavy travel. So,
Yeah, what happened on Phase 1 was those were city poles, so we kept the poles and we got new fixtures. Here, we're going to have the option of new poles and new fixtures, so we can select them.
okay. Mark, can you, for the pleasure of the board, can we look at those poles before we design them, bring them back here and let the board take a look at them?
I can send you
Because-
their,
Okay.
their selection
All right.
catalog and take a look at them.
The other thing too, if you all, I know we have this issue with the homeless population, but you're going to have a whole stretch of sidewalks, and I know there hadn't been any mention about benches on the sidewalk. And do we want benches on the sidewalk? It's going to be pretty desolate, with just all the sidewalk. Are we going to have? Do you want any spaces where you want people to just have the opportunity to sit on the sidewalk?
I think so.
And if so, this is the time to let Mark know. Maybe there are some places where we can put in some benches so that people can sit out on the roadway.
What we did on Phase 1 was at the mid-block crossings, there's benches there. And I think a few bike racks also. Typically where it widens out a little bit, where we have a little bit more room to put them in.
Okay.
So where there's no parking and we widen out the curb and we have a little more area to put that stuff, put
Okay.
your hardscape features in. But yeah, any input on that would be appreciated.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, we need to think about that.
Are you east or west side, or both that you're discussing?
Everybody, well, on the business side, you'll see more people on the west side walking. But then it takes away from the Esplanade as well. I would say on the west side, because it gives a person who is visiting or somebody just want to stroll down, the downtown. You can stroll from Brown and Brown all the way to Orange Avenue, and take some rest in between on some benches. So,
wine walk or a beer walk. or a food
exactly,
truck
yeah.
walk, Or, you know, shopping days, a place to sit and stop. If you're
Yeah.
on the east side, which is the other side, you have all those opportunities in the park to find a bench.
Exactly,
Sit
yeah.
and watch the sunrise.
But on the west side where the apartment complex is gonna be going, the 400 Beach Street, they're gonna have their own, so that it's mainly like from there to get to the Brown and Brown, and then to cross over to get to Indian, and then, because do we know what's gonna be on the Old County lot ever?
No, not at the moment. And I'm not sure if Brown and Brown is gonna have benches out there. I don't know, on the sidewalk. So I haven't seen any plans for them to
Is there
do
gonna be any
sidewalks.
input from businesses that say they prefer or do not prefer in front of their business? Or does it, I mean, I would think that that'd be worthwhile question to ask. As far as the county parcel, since the cross-section is sidewalk right there, you have you can put benches anytime for that. That's, you know, depending on, because you don't know what might be developed as part of the development of that parcel. That would be 10 or 15-foot landscape buffer maybe along that edge. So there's, that would go with site plan,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
goes in there.
But if you're talking to going back down to Bay on the south end, you no more need benches in front of that post office because you got enough homeless people living there in their wheelchairs and on those
Steps.
walls that are bothering you
Plenty
anyway.
of steps to sit on.
So, yeah, so you don't, that would not be an area, I would think, that you would want to stay in until from the post office, and then you get to the vacant land, and then you get to Indian to
But see,
consider.
now you know what planners go through. Because for every idea, there's a different idea.
Well,
The other item, Mr. Chair, I want to ask Mark about the upsizing of the water and sewer lines. You're doing upsizing at MMB, right? Upsizing the water sewer lines?
You talking on Beach Street?
Yes, Beach and MMB.
I think on MMB, we're going with an 8-inch. There was a 6-inch there now.
Okay, so you upsizing
Yeah.
water and sewer?
Well, the sewer, storm drains under the road, they're very small and old pipe right now. We are upsizing storm drain.
Okay,
The sanitary sewer, it's an 8-inch typical collection size, and we're not upsizing that. It's the same size. It's just in terrible shape.
okay, so you're
The
improving.
materials will be different. You'll put
Materials.
PVC instead of clay.
Correct.
Now, you're going up to Ridgewood, or where are you gonna stop?
The sewer flows towards Beach Street. There's a manhole about 50 feet south of Ridgewood.
Okay,
Flows that way. So we're going to stop there.
okay,
The water main will connect up to the water main at Ridgewood for circulation. And we'll do connections at Palmetto
okay.
as long as we're in there.
Well, that's a plus.
Yeah, it's,
So, just wondering, does any of what you're talking about do with flood prevention, or is that just for like sewage?
we're talking about sanitary.
Okay.
Um,
Because basically, from what my question is, this whole strip here, I feel like doesn't have very much flooding on it at all, I think, in my experience, but just north and just south of it, I think have extreme flooding. I just wasn't sure, like, particularly Bay Street. And I don't know if how far Michigan Avenue is from Main Street, where, like, the fishing hole is, if you know what I'm talking about. Both
Right.
those areas
It's-
flood every single time it rains for more than, like, 20 minutes. I just wasn't sure if there was any kind of plan going into effect because we're tearing it up to maybe do something.
What, in terms of the flooding issue, you are correct. They haven't, upsized the outfall pipes and put backflow preventers in the park on all the outfalls with the intent to stop the river when it comes up.
Were those active when they flooded most recently? Or was that before that?
I think they mostly installed before the previous flood.
Okay.
The last storms.
So not super effective is what I'm getting at.
Well, there's probably some outfalls that are are unknown and it just
Yeah.
routes around.
Sure.
The opportunities, we looked at potentially raising the level of the road, but we're so locked in to development on both sides of the road that the opportunities are kind of limited. The amount we could raise the road is very limited and still get back to the park elevation or brown elevation. We can't be so high that we'd be tying back into the park somewhere.
That doesn't help you out with flooding anyway.
No. So I think the area near the fishing hole, all that probably be looked at in terms of the whole North Beach, Ballou Road, Fairview intersection when all that is studied.
But this would be the one, if we wanted to talk about Bay Street, would be with this project.
Bay Street would be with this project, yes.
So is everything downstream of that capable of handling it? So once you upsize this section, everything but after that, is it going to be compatible? Is it going to be large enough to handle the flow?
They upsized the pipes and rearranged them in the riverfront park downstream from that. Upstream from this, I don't know what utilities has planned in terms of storm drain upgrades, but in the park project, there was a clear effort to upsize the outfalls, and some of the backflow preventers, I think, were installed before the park got there, and some when the park was constructed. But they did upsize the outfall pipes. A lot of them were like 12-inch. They went to 30 and things like that.
And does that continue past Orange Avenue, or how far south does it go?
In terms of the backflow preventers?
And the upgrades and backflow?
In terms of with the park, they stopped at Orange Avenue. I think there probably was some backflows installed south of Orange Avenue. I'd have to confirm that with utilities. That was a completely different project. But I do know in terms of the park, I saw the drawings that they made an effort to upsize the outfalls, replace the old pipe. I know some were in terrible shape. So that stretch between Beach Street and the river was upsized.
Do you know what direction the stormwater flows south of Orange on Beach Street? If you go Beach or Orange Avenue down to Bethune Point on Beach Street.
So flat is,
Yeah, I think there's a major outfall between those locations, somewhere. I can't think
Around
of
the
one at South Street.
marina?
I think it's near South Street. There's a
South.
They put a
large,
roundabout in there, and that was. the
Yeah,
next
I
one.
think there's
There might
a-
be one just south of that, the next intersection, because they did a lot of improvements in the intersection there as well.
yeah.
And it looks like there's one there by the yacht club, because there's an aluminum stilling basin right there.
Right. So there's, I don't have the map in front of me, but I think there's several outfalls between Orange Avenue and Bethune Point plant.
It's just that what happens is you've got it's not much, but there's a little bit of a rise between Beach Street and Palmetto. And then Palmetto's low and traditionally low. And then it comes up, Ridgewood is a ridge and it's high. So everything's just coming down that way. And when it hits Palmetto, it has no place to go.
Yeah.
And then Magnolia, you can see that's affected by the tides.
Totally.
As we come in there, and there'll be 3 inches of water over the crown of the road whenever there's a king tide. So it's, if all of the opportunities get backflow preventers, that's the only way. We were talking about it last meeting. That's really the only way you keep the water. You've got a levee, in effect, at the park between the river and Beach Street, but the water's going through the drainage system underneath there and coming up through the inlets on Magnolia, and so they have to have backflow preventers, or that's going to continue.
Right.
So were you saying
It's connected. There's probably outfalls that don't have backflow preventers that are connected somehow. I mean, this is the oldest part of the town. Whenever you're constructing in here, you're always finding stuff that's not mapped. Nobody knows it was there.
So you're saying the section from south of Orange down to Bethune Point, that's in a future plan, or that has already been done, or?
The outfalls?
The outfalls, yeah.
I'm not in utilities. That's a utility project. I would have to check with them. I do
I've
not.
seen construction work in the last 15 years that were major outfalls from Ridgewood to the river in that stretch. So my guess is that most of the work's been done. There might be some local stuff on Palmetto that would have to be done.
I do know there was a backflow preventer installed near 7-Eleven south of Orange Avenue as part of that sidewalk project that just got completed. I do remember now that a backflow preventer was installed on at least one outfall down there. So there are probably outfall or backflow preventers on some of the outfalls south of Orange Avenue.
And Mark, another question for you on the landscaping, the trees, street trees. I know in the past on some of our projects, we've been manually watering the trees. This project will have
Irrigation,
irrigation.
you're welcome.
We are going to be connecting to the reclaimed water,
Okay,
and so that will be the source of the irrigation.
okay.
On the crosswalks that we've got for Mount B and up by the Brown and Brown, what are they gonna be made of? Because you said there's not gonna be the pavers and everything like that.
The pavers, we didn't want to put in on the sidewalk. We probably will do pavers at the accents and mid-block crossings.
Okay.
But the sidewalk on each side will be the shell concrete.
But are you gonna do the arches like we have in Phase 1 to continue up to that area? Or is that just gonna be just crossover?
That's still, there's a problem foundation-wise with the arches where we have it located. There's a lot of storm drain structures and boxes there that are causing an issue. So we have a design for the arches, but it hasn't been fully vetted whether we're going to put them in there. Part of the thought was it's one arch, kind of way down at the end of the project, pretty isolated from the other arches. Is that really aesthetically kind of a continuation of the arches, or is it better just to kind of stop the arches where they are and just have the mid-block crossing? I don't think, that decision hasn't been finalized.
Will there be any kind of warning lights or for pedestrian warning lights to stop traffic so you can get across?
We will have the flashing beacon lights like are in Phase 1 where the pedestrian can hit it and the flashing lights will be going off. Yes.
All right, thank you.
And you said it's about a 15, 16-month project? And so obviously if the funds aren't in this budget, are we thinking maybe 2025? I mean, are we, because then you're also saying you're waiting for 400? And so they've got like 2 years to get their funds together and everything? Is that what was in the approval for them? Before they pulled permits and they had to start building on the 400?
Oh,
Sure. They're ready to go.
Just finalizing their drawings with utilities and public works. They're at Phase 3 of their drawings.
Okay.
we are waiting to see what the utility extension is that they're doing because we have to coordinate with that. I don't think that's behind our heads.
Okay.
I'm sure they're working on it.
Any other comments, board? Redevelopment Director, sir?
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Nice to see things start.
Thank you, Mark.
We don't have any action to take on that, it was just a report. Happy report. So, we've got the ethics training coming up and reapportionment, so
It's just a reminder, Mr. Chair, that everyone needs to get their ethics training. And for your leisure, for folks who want to be in person, we have a 4-hour the training is 4 hours online, but if you want to do it in person, May the 12th, we have an in-person session at City Hall, May the 12th,
Online is anytime,
anytime.
but once you start it, you're supposed to go 2 hours at a time, or you can start and stop?
You can
or-
start and
You,
stop it.
you can start and stop it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I've gotten used to doing that, all my continuing ed.
Yeah.
I cram the day before my PE license is up. How about reappointments? I went online and,
Yes, everyone has to reapply for their board seat.
I did it through the DDA though, because I'm their representative, so did I need to do it for this one too, for the
Yes.
same?
different form.
But if I don't get reappointed for the DDA, there's no sense in doing this one, because I'm their representative. So it's damned if I do, damned if I don't. If I'm not reappointed to DDA, then I wouldn't be on this board.
Yeah, good point, yes.
Yeah, I'm going to check that with the city.
Just kind of like planning board, if they're reapplying to planning board,
I'm an appointee of the
He's-
planning board. I never put in an application for this board. They
Yeah,
just
see.
appointed me.
the
Okay.
delegates from the planning and the DDA, I don't think have to reapply for this, because if we aren't,
Yeah.
Approved
those
on
two
R2.
cases may, be exempt. Ben, you have any concerns about that?
It's not a legal issue, it's just a question of how we process that stuff. I would get with Betty Goodman if I were you.
If you have somebody appointed from a planning board or some other board, then
Right.
if they're no longer on it, you pick somebody else to be appointed to fill that slot.
Yeah, typically the commission will take a recommendation from the board and then act on that. From the board that you're sitting on.
That needs somebody.
From the planning board, excuse me.
Gotcha. Well, we have no public, so I don't assume there's any public comments. Any board comments?
I do for Mr. Gross. Ben, you were going to send us the coding on what needed to be on, whether retail had been changed on the first floor and on Beach Street.
That hasn't come to you yet? You haven't gotten that?
No, sir. And if so, what core is that? So far, how far does it continue to go? Because like I said, if you got a gym in one block and you weren't allowed to have it in the south block or in the middle block, and you've got it 24 hours up there and they're not doing any retail, and that's all they're doing, there's some disconnect about what the codes say are.
Well, codes don't typically dictate hours of operation. They don't typically limit hours of operation. For certain types of uses, they do.
Correct, but
Yeah.
it says you can't have a tattoo parlor. It says you can't have coastal wrestling.
Right.
So it also states in that I wanted to see about the copy, in the past, we had to have retail in the front part of every business that faces Beach Street on the west side of the road.
Right. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't
That's okay.
see it.
Thank you.
Anything else to come before the board?
Actually, if I can back up, but I remember one of your questions was, would a health club be considered to be retail? When we talked about that. And I think that would not be considered retail under our land development code. It's a separate category. I think other indoor recreation, but that wasn't your only question. You were concerned about the wraps on the first floor. Yeah.
What if they're selling
Pardon me?
protein supplements?
Huh.
Maybe a certain percentage of
Yeah,
the
it has to be
business has to
percentage
be
of the
actually
business.
retail to qualify for it.
Well, you can have multiple principal uses in a space, and each principal use then has to meet the requirements of that use.
I gotcha.
I just was under the impression that it was like the first 10 or the first 15 feet inside a business, that you have to have retail before, like with networks, they do all their stuff in the back, but they have their front of where they have retail.
Right.
Britzy's had jewelry in the front, and they had all of the equipment in the back for the rehab center.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to sit down. I started looking at that, but there's so many zoning districts, and then we have a couple of PDs too, like we have the Burgoyne that got adopted. And so the answer may literally change, by block face, or
Okay.
part of a block face.
And I also asked about the dumpster and everything on Beach Street. And then I know that, because I'd asked at the DDA also, then the people of Kale started working on it for a little bit, and then they've stopped again. So is that, where does that code come in to have to do that? I mean,
You mean the construction dumpster that they're using for their renovation? I think as long as they're still doing their renovation, they can use that dumpster.
but the renovation, you can see the windows have been left open. I mean, it's almost as bad as the funeral home that's down there, on Bevel, that's open and just everything coming in. But it's very rarely been used, and they started it easily over a year ago.
Okay.
I mean, that dumpster hadn't been moved. That dumpster hadn't had enough to be emptied to pay for the dumpster to be emptied in.
Okay. We'll take a look at, see what our requirements are on construction, because it's a construction site.
Let's get with each other.
Yeah, okay. And Mr. Chair, we did verify that Ms. Cook and Mr. Newman does not have to reapply.
Pretty good.
Yeah, only the,
Quick work.
yeah,
Take
you
the
go.
back row of it.
There you go.
yeah.
Well, I just reapplied this last year for the planning board, so
You're good.
if you needed it,
No.
Letitia has
No,
my
you're good.
application.
Well, if that's it, I guess we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
All right.